everyone, Josh here, J Vintage Honda Minis, Orlando, Florida, East Orlando. Today's video is going to be on the Z50 Softail carbs, like 72 and up through Z50R, XR50s. They all kind of use a variation on the same carb. I made a video rebuilding one of these versions of the carbs about a year and a half ago or so. Just couldn't find good information on the float height, so I just sat on it. But now I've gathered all the information for the various carbs that were used throughout those years, and feel confident to kind of put the video out on it now. So first off, we'll kind of overview the different carbs that came on the Softail Z50 and up years, and then we'll get into the old video of me just rebuilding it. Alright, shameless plug, that's my phone number. Again, I'm in Orlando, Florida. If you guys have any work that you think I might be of help with, rebuilding these little mini trails, servicing, parts, sourcing, etc., just give me a shout. That's my cell phone number. Anyways, we're on our workbench here, and what we're looking at is an array of carbs that you would find on these vintage bikes, these mini trail 50cc Z50s. I've already done a video on the Hardtail KO through K2. That's through 1971. So that's the carb that you would have found on that bike. We're not really going to focus on it, but I'm just going to show it to you guys. This particular next carb is something you'll find on the first few runs of the K3. The sources that I found the float information for on this carb say it's through the K6 also, so K3 through K6. The casting number that you're going to find on this carb is 655A as an apple, and I kind of call this just the round bowl carb based on it having a full-on round cylindrical bowl. It's got a neck for the slide area and the cap that's very similar in size, probably the same exact size as the Hardtail carb setup. So that kind of makes this unique. What makes this also unique is that it has a float inside of it that actually has a brass adjustment that you can make on it, so you can adjust the float height on this carb. That's what I'm talking about there. It's plastic float body, but the actual connection tab is made up of brass. And then on the very bottom that they have incorporated on this bowl is a little area that you have a rubber seal that would go there, and the main jet sits on that emulsion tube. That's not a, this would be for the idle, or not the idle, but the low speed jetting, I guess you could call it, but this is actually called an emulsion tube. It's not a jet. Alright, so that's like the first version of Softail carbs that you're going to run across. Alright, so moving on, the next three carbs are kind of actually labeled as the casting numbers are PA03 across the board, but there are some differences that we'll find on these carbs. So when we step up to the next carb that is designated in the source information, this one would be found on a 76 to 77, and it changes the design in a few different ways. Primarily, it's, you know, the aesthetics of the carb start to look more like the same carb throughout the rest of the run of these carburetors. I kind of would generally call it a Z50R style carb, XR50 carb, but this is the first year that they started to kind of have this design. The actual neck here where the slide is enlarges, so you have a much larger slide. If we look inside, we have still a plastic or some form of polymer float, and it has a metal brass fixture here tab that can be adjusted for float height. Still has an emulsion tube, and you have a jet that on this one is pressed in, and then your drain bowl screw, its actual screw with the metal flathead connection on it, and then the gasket, based on the whole carb casting here, is changed to a different run of the gasket. This is what the press-in main jet looks like. It's got a little O-ring, and just presses into the body here. It's a friction fit. It still incorporates that little rubber seal that you would find like on the previous version. Okay. The next carb is still the PAO3 series, but it's changing now internally also slightly. On the exterior, it gets this star, this rubber or this hard plastic screw star. No longer need a flathead to release the fuel. The caps and all that are all very similar. The internals change with the float. On this one, they went to an all plastic float, so there's no more metal tab for adjustment. It is what it is. Maybe you can tweak it here and there, but for the most part, you're going to have to replace it if the float level starts to change. It's got an emulsion tube. This is a screw-in main jet. It's threaded. And then on the bowl, they remove the little seal that goes down there at the base of it, so that's no longer part of the design anymore. And then this one is actually an imported Z50J carb, still a Kean carb, but this is an imported version. And this is very similar to what you'll find on an XR50 or the later Z50Rs, but the thing that makes this one different is the flange. If we look at both of these flanges, this one has the screw bosses built into it, so you screw the screw directly into it and it pulls it up against the intake manifold. And this one has a through hole with a square nut built into the casting. The other thing that's different on this, actually there is nothing else different on this one other than the flange, so to speak. This has a plastic float. Again, no metal tab, no adjustability, screw in main, emulsion tube, and that's pretty much it. Alright, before we go to the old video I made on the carb rebuild, which I actually rebuilt the this guy, or one of, not this one particularly, but the round bodied one, the first Z50 Softail carb that was introduced with the bike. So I rebuilt this one, but it's going to work for pretty much the same concept across the board. But real quick, just this is the imported Z50J carb that comes on the bikes that are still over in Japan. They still make this carb, and that's the part number. You can get these over at CHP for a reasonable price. They're importing them. Who else? Dr. ATV or Beecher Cycles, the same person out of, I think, Nebraska. He sells it on his site. But basically this is a plug and play carb, you know. I don't muck around too much with cleaning carbs that all look like this one. I'll just go ahead and buy this carb as a replacement. It comes with the same jetting. It will use all the same jets that you can get here easily. You know, again, that's a Kean carb. It's made for Honda. So this would actually be usable even on a hardtail bike if you don't have your original carb. I mean, a lot of people are visual, so am I. So I'll just show you real quick. So this is a hardtail intake manifold. It's got the pre-built studs on it. That's how that hardtail carb attaches. And then you switch over to a Softail intake manifold, which is exactly the same shape, same size, same flanges. But they did away with the studs, and you just have a through hole. Okay, so when we're gonna, if we choose to take any of these other carbs or buy this brand new Z50J carb, you're gonna, on a hardtail, you're gonna want to just push this one to the side, get yourself a later style manifold, because you got to use a bolt to attach to this flange here. Okay, so that will still work. And like I said, if you wanted on a hardtail, if you're putting this newer style carb on there, here's a hardtail air box. Okay, and there's a smaller diameter that hooks on the smaller hardtail carb flange. This is a Z50R intake or air box, but this is actually the same exact kind of style as what you'll find on a 1972 through 78 air box. It comes with this rubber flange, and like I said, if you just steal this flange from or buy a new flange from a parts dealer, this will allow you to adapt the air filter. So it will hold it, and then this will connect right up to the larger flange on the newer Star Carb. So you still get to kind of use that air box, okay, if you want that look on a hardtail while using a modern so next up, what we'll do before we get into the build refurbishment of the carb cleaning, this is gonna be a screenshot. I'll put this up for a few seconds or whatever so you can kind of read the floats for each one of these bikes that or carbs that I have. The other thing that I do in this video is I clean the jets with a wire wheel strand that I pull out of a brass wire wheel or whatever. I mean, you got to be careful with that, because if you enlarge any of these small jets, you're altering the fuel ratio and air. You're just altering the way that jet was designed. So you got to be very careful with that. I don't really have any other options for you, but I'm just going to note that I'm aware of the situation. I know that some people will call foul on that, but it is what it is. You choose to do how you want to clean these small jets, but sometimes I run a small little wire through it, and it will dislodge some stuff that I can't get out. So let's go ahead and get into the rebuild video. I'm going to show the different carbs and their float levels so that you can take a note of that based on what carb or year you have, because that's critical to each body. Each one has a different carb float height, so be mindful of that.